Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. I am Brian, and today we're going to be going over this very interesting battery. This is a 250 amp hour battery from Vestwoods, and I'm going to show you guys what I found out during the testing of this little guy right here. So just to go over a quick few specs before we dive into the details, this is again 250 amp hours, 12.8 volt battery. It measures 19 inches long by approximately 7 inches deep and 7 inches tall. Per my scale, this thing weighs approximately 70 pounds. So it is a little bit heavier of a battery compared to most 200 amp hour batteries. But again, this is a rated 250 amp hour battery. So it comes with your standard M8 terminal bolts with your captive lock washers and washers. And this thing at the time when Vestwoods sent this out to me was approximately $749 on Amazon. Now today, it is not on Amazon anymore. I'm assuming probably because the stock was depleted. I anticipate this coming back on Amazon whenever the stock is, of course, shipped back into the warehouse. That puts this with the rated amp hours at 23 cents a watt. So that is extremely cheap for a LifePO4 battery. This thing does have a Bluetooth module built inside of it, so you can access the internals of this battery via a Bluetooth. And let me show you what that looks like here, because it's a little bit finicky to get into, but you can open up the Vestwoods app and you can click Bluetooth search. And the thing is, as you can see here, it pulls up every single Bluetooth item that I have around me. So it's kind of difficult to find this particular battery if you don't know the exact model and serial number of this battery. So I'm gonna hit cancel, and you can hit the scan button and it pulls up the phone. And you can scan, there's a little barcoded sticker up here in the corner, and you can actually scan that sticker and it finds the battery that way. I found that's the easiest way to get this thing connected to Bluetooth. And you can see it pulls up quite a bit of information. So it's got the current voltage. Obviously there's no amps going in and out of this battery, so that's at 0. The state of charge is currently at 54%. You can see the full capacity is rated 250 amps. And I've cycled this thing 5 times. So that's through all of my testing that I've been doing, and it's got a cycle count, so that's pretty beneficial. It also has down here at the bottom all 4 cells and what they're currently sitting at, so it kind of gives you an idea of if these things are out of balance or if they're all aligned. So that's good. And then of course it gives you the temperature. Now speaking of temperatures, Vestwood does claim that this has a low temp disconnect shutoff function built into this, so this should not charge below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and we'll test that out. It's got a 200 amp BMS, so your continuous discharge rate is 200 amps on this thing. Your max charge rate is up to 200 amps. And they claim that this battery has got your standard operating temperatures between -4 degrees and 131 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can use this battery pretty safely in a wide range of environments. And you can connect these things in series or parallel up to 4 each. And Vestwoods offers a 5-year warranty on this. So with all those specs aside, let's switch clips and go over first the DC discharge test. So for the DC discharge test, I'm just using a straight capacity tester, and I find that's pretty useful because it eliminates any conversion loss that you're going to have when you use an actual inverter converting DC to AC to try to get the actual usable capacity out of these batteries. And as you can see, when I ran the DC capacity test, I was able to get out 232 amp hours. So again, this is rated at 250 amp hours, so I was not able to get up to that 250 amp hour advertised capacity. So I also wanted to do an AC discharge test using my very good Guiandel 3000 watt inverter, and during that test I was able to get out 224 amp hours off of the AC discharge test. This thing did not get up to 250 amps off of both AC and DC discharge testing. So that was a little bit of a bummer to not get at least the rated capacity. Normally on these batteries, you get a little bit over the capacity. Now you can assume that the manufacturer, Vestwood, they have their BMS shutting off before you're gonna get down to the very bottom of these batteries. So that's always a given because most manufacturers do not want you to completely deplete the cells in here. But I would think that a manufacturer would not set that BMS so high that you're not going to at least get the rated amp hours. So with that testing out of the way, let's switch clips to test out the low temperature disconnect function and make sure that it's working properly. Let's just not tell my wife that I'm using her freezer to freeze our batteries. All right, let that marinate for about a day. All right, 24 hours later. 2.3 degrees. Okay guys, so this has been in the freezer for about 24 hours. You saw it was 2 degrees in that freezer, but I'm gonna pull up the app on this battery and see if we can't find out the internal temperature of it. It is negative 14 degrees Celsius. So we should be not charging when I hook this thing up. So let's give it a shot. Okay, so I've got the charger plugged on. Hopefully you can tell it's got a red and a green light on it, which means it is erroring out. And if you look at the app, there is 0 current. So passing score. This thing does not charge when it's below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Way to go, Vestwoods. Okay, so as you can see, the low temp disconnect feature does work, which is great because the great Mr. Will Prowse has proven that some of these manufacturers state that they have a low temp disconnect switch and they actually don't. This one is stated that it does and it actually works, so that's a good thing. Okay folks, so now let's hop over to the discharge testing. So for the discharge testing of this Vestwoods, I've got my Guiandel 3000 watt 12 volt inverter hooked up. I got a 250 amp fuse, and I am also running my Victron Smart Shunt that I will also put up on the screen here so you can kind of monitor along with me. So this battery has a 200 amp BMS built into it, so it should be capable of discharging 200 amps continuously. We're gonna get as close as we can to that. I would really rather prefer to have 2 aught cables instead of 2 AWG cables connected to it. So I might not push this thing as much as I can because I don't want to risk a fire, but we're going to go as high as we can. So I'm going to put up the Victron Smart Shunt app here, and you can see right now my Guiandel is only pulling 10 watts. So it's a very low power inverter, 1500 watt heat gun. So we're going to start off on the low setting. And that gets us to around 60 amps, 760 watts. So let's crank this thing up to high. That gets us to around 120 amps, 1500 watts. So this inverter is pretty nice. It toggles between your output kilowatt usage and your input voltage. So I also wanted to show you the sine wave pulling 1500 watts. This inverter has got a beautiful sine wave. 117 volts. Heat gun number 2. 215 amps. 2600 watts. And we shut down. So it ran over 200 amps for about 10 seconds. I'm going to keep it right around 175 amps. Well, gang, the only thing that failed was the fuse. Well, the battery can definitely handle at least 200 amps. Battery functioned fine as far as being able to power up to 200 amps, no issues. This Guiandel inverter, guys, I've had it in a couple of videos of mine, and I gotta tell you, it is just, it's awesome. It's a workhorse. You know, this is rated for 3000 watts, and a lot of times inverters tell you 3000 watts and you might get 2000 watts out of them. This one has no problem getting close to that 3000 watts, and it's just built like an absolute tank. I highly recommend this inverter, or they even have a 2000 watt version. They've got 24 volt versions, but for a 12 volt system, and if you need a pretty good beefy inverter, guys, check it out. I think it's a really nice inverter. As far as the discharge test, yes, it gets up to 200 amps and it goes a little bit over 200 amps for around 10 seconds. So you're safe there if you hit that peak, if you have the correct size fuse. And I would also recommend using at least 2 aught cable if you're gonna get up to 200 amps. Okay, so no issues with the actual rated capacity. The only thing that was limiting me is my actual setup that I personally was using, so I'm not gonna fault Vestwoods for that. My fuse blew, which it should do, but I didn't have a large enough fuse to really get up there high and push this thing, but I'm gonna give this a passing score for the discharge test. Now, my overall evaluation of this battery is meh. It averaged around 20 amp hours below its rated 250 amp hour capacity, and to me, that's one of the most important features that you're looking for when you go to buy a battery. And I'm pretty sure my tests were pretty accurate. Now, of course, with the AC test, there is conversion loss, so keep that in play. But again, I was still only able to get 224 amp hours, so we're 26 amp hours short, and I'm almost positive that my Guiandel inverter does not waste up 26 amp hours. The Bluetooth functionality, it works. It's a little quirky to get into. I wish it was simple. You could just open up the app and this battery would show up, especially if you have two of them far away or in an RV closet. It's kind of difficult to have to get up if you're going to use the scan feature of this barcode to get up and go scan each battery on your phone. I wish that it was a little bit easier to connect to Bluetooth, but it does work and it shows a lot of pertinent information when you do access the app. So Bluetooth is good, it works. And the low temp disconnect feature worked as advertised. So everything worked well except the rated capacity, which was a little bit of a bummer. Again, I wish it would have gotten up to at least the rated capacity, but again, this thing is 23 cents a watt hour. But if you do happen to look at this battery and are interested in it, I wasn't able to get 250 amp hours. Now, I wanted to make this video because I want to show that not every battery or anything that I review is always going to be perfect. And this one kind of fell short in some of my expectations of not being able to get to the advertised rated capacity. So that was a little bit of a disappointment on this battery. That's kind of in a nutshell my review over this Vestwoods 250 amp hour battery. Hope you guys found that somewhat informative or somewhat entertaining, who knows. But guys, until next time, we'll see you soon. Thanks, take care.